Custard. I love the stuff. I can't get enough of it. I love to have a bit of custard with, a bit of spotted dick, bit of, whatever you want, whatever dessert you could name. I love it. I love a bit of custard. But you might ask, why are you suddenly talking about custard of all things? Well, you see, custard is actually, when you look at it, especially if its ingredients, is actually made up of many different things. Now, you may remember on the channel we've talked about of food being made up of different things. You may remember, of course, the chicken pizza and how difficult it would be for a chicken pizza to be made here in the UK and then maybe shipped to, I don't know, the EU. You may remember we've talked about all the different things involved when it would come to shipping just that one item and how many different of paperwork you would need, because you would need stuff for like the tomato sauce, you need stuff for the chicken, you need stuff for the cheese. And just imagine the sheer amount of paperwork. And if you've been following this, we're not talking like one or two sheets of paper for these things. We are talking wads, like big wads for just one thing in particular. So what does this mean for custard? Because custard is, again, made up of multiple ingredients. How hard could it really be to get custard through customs? Well, we're about to go through how hard it really is to get that delicious stuff through customs on into Europe. So, as always, before we go diving into the article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club as well. And do remember as well to ring the bell so you get notifications of when we do a new video and when we go live. But as always, guys and gals, like I say, thank you very much for all the support that you do show the channel. And of course, on with this. We go over to the Kent bylines with the title of Getting Custard Through Customs. From this week, British exporters of composite foods to France will have to submit some paperwork in French. This was supposed to start on the 1st of January, but the British had a plea for an extension. I suppose this was to enable exporters to hunt around for some competent keyboarders proficient both in French and in export lingo. The penalty, if they get it wrong, is a form that is presented in bad French to a French customs official. And that is a lorry full of custard or puddings or whatever could be turned right back around to Kent. So that is really what is at stake. That if you get anything wrong, and these forms are no longer just in English, you now have to sort of provide them in French. Whereas before, well, when we were in the EU, we didn't have to. And if you don't have someone who is proficient in French, or even, shall we say, the trade the lingua querma, as they say in the Discworld, that stuff's getting turned around. That entire lorry is getting turned around. And we've talked before just how damaging that could be, not only to the business, certainly for any future trade that business might want to do. It could potentially even lose the entire shipment. Of course, it's custard powder, so it's not exactly fresh food. But again, imagine if this was fresh food, how long is that fresh food going to last? You can already see just how much stuff this is doing. And the damage this is doing to the UK trade, we've already shown you the numbers. It's not good. We are losing trade in very significant volumes, which means that the government is taking in less revenue, which leads to things like the fact that Jeremy Hunt has to go and do on this austerity trade agenda. But of course, if we if we hadn't left the EU, we wouldn't have that massive black hole. But anyway, back to it. So, composite food. Composite food is designed as a food that has plant or animal based food mixed in with it. So, fresh chicken or frozen lamb is not composite, or nor would fresh cauliflowers. But a packet like a frozen pie or a pudding with milk in it is composite. So, how important to the UK is this export of composite foods? Well, I had a quick look at the trade tables, and it's times hundreds each figure, the composite food of code 210420 in the World Integrated Trade Data. In 2001, in 2021, sorry, the UK exported some $42,000 of this stuff. Mind you, some EU countries exported more. Germany exported $64,000 and France at $49,000. Just like the French to be better at the food trade. So, if the French are good with food, just what exactly are the English successful exporting to France? I have an inkling because I have a francophone grandson, and he is very fond of custard, which can be bought in Brussels under the name of crème anglaise. You can also be almost sure that the food is really native to England, if the French still have to use the English name pudding, or muffin and crumpet. I went along to the local convenience shop here in Kent to photograph some of the convenience puddings on their shelves, in this sort of instant sugary creamy dessert that appeals, I guess, to the French working families as much as to the English, regardless of health advice to cut down on such food and eat fresh where possible. So what are the rules? So, the regulations regarding EU trade on composite food can be found online state this. They say, the risk posed by composite products to the public and animal health depends on the type of ingredients and on their storage conditions and packaging. Shelf-stable composite products that do not contain processed meat as an ingredient do not need to be transported or stored under controlled temperatures and pose the lowest risk as regards to animal health and microbiological food safety. This is the case for dairy and egg products contained on shelf-stable composite products that have undergone treatment during their manufacture, such as sterilization or treatment using high ultra temperature to eliminate the risk. The risk for animal health and, of course, microbiological food safety are mitigated where composite products are securely packaged or sealed. So, okay, that's most of the pudding fits into that. So it should be mitigated. But, and this is why trade rules are often complicated, and it's not because governments make this difficult or they needlessly need to be difficult, it's because this is just how these technical things go. Now, this is why most of the British public turn off when it comes to regulations and things like this. But unfortunately, Brexiteers use this to their advantage and, try to make what is really actually a very complicated subject in basically slogan words. So that's where you get the whole taking back control, sovereignty, whatever. Because unfortunately, you cannot condense these quite complicated technical agreements into very simple statements. It's more than that. So anyway, let's go on. So, but the next paragraph does show a red flag. However, chemical food safety risks are not reduced by treatments that make composite products shelf stable. So why might that be? Well, if you know anything about the food industry, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure someone will correct me, but custard, I believe, is actually quite explosive if in large enough quantities. Because I know it contains vanilla extract, and vanilla extract by itself is quite explosive. So in large enough quantities, which obviously they would be transporting significant quantities of this, it would actually be, I believe, quite explosive. Now, I might be wrong on that, but I'm sure I read that somewhere. But again, I'm willing to say I might be wrong on that. So take me with a pinch of custard on that. But we continue. Before the following paragraphs can explain, the process has to be certified as coming from a third country with an accepted certification process. Then comes this clause. Certain shelf-stable composite products do not contain processed meat, exempt from the official controls and the border controls posted in accordance with this regulation. Entering the Union from third countries should be accompanied by a private attention provided by the importing food business operator. So, a private extension from the agent of the food importer, that is, of course, in France. So, this explains why it might be necessary to submit the extension forms in French, turn up with the English extension, and get turned back. So, an article in the Grocer also alerted me to the stakes at the end that DEFRA has made of the translated versions of the forms available online, but I could not find these. Furthermore, I suspect the problem is not the translation of the form's questions, but of the answers. The exact origin of the cocoa butter, for example, which may have been harvested in one country, processed in another, and then made, quote, shelf stable in a packaging pudding in the UK. What I did find in my brief time of photography of the fast pudding shelf is that the trade is very international. One brand is entirely produced in New Zealand, another is produced for a Swiss company, but the address is in Greece and in the UK. Another gives nutritional information in both English and Norwegian. So it is not only French testers who could be in demand. And of course, I find it very odd that the English pride themselves in being a trading nation, yet at the same time complain about being poor language learners. With regard to learning French in Kent, it does not help that via the Brexit rules have made it more difficult to get the French language assistance in local schools, but that is another story. Meanwhile, Bosch chance avec le pudding. Again, never did French. So yeah, I mean that's really two stories, honestly, in one. This is just going to cause more troubles at the border. This is going to cause a lot more headaches for more companies because, like I say, it's not just, of course, Custard that's going to have even more paperwork to do and get through the borders. You've got all these things now having to have international language. To be honest, I did German at school. To be honest, I wish I could sort of speak more German because I'll tell you what, I would love to get involved with this. I bet there's a ton of translators now that are just eyeing up, or should we say, suddenly maybe have had a lot of phone calls since the start of the year. Help! I need a full-time translator. Can you come and help me? It wouldn't surprise me. And of course, this is just extra costs, and we've talked about this. I mean, how much is it now for a company to take on these extra costs for a translator, not just the paperwork, because we know the paperwork roughly is something like £260. Of course, this is sort of per time, per travel. So this is adding to your logistics cost. And I think there's even more possible paperwork cost involved as well. But now we've got to add professional, French translation services. How much does that cost? How much is that going to cost per document? Because that's what they charge. I had a look at this before. For a French translator, if you want something translated, they are charging by the paper and even some by the word. And it's not cheap. It is not cheap at all. So this is going to add yet more cost to UK businesses, to which they're probably going to go, what's the point? What's the point in trading with Europe? And the thing is, Europe's our biggest trading partner, and some of them can't afford to lose this trade. They are trying desperately to try and keep this trade as much as possible. But all this extra paperwork, all this extra red tape, all the threats that the EU retained law bill is going to bring to their businesses, potentially within the year, is going to cause them huge amounts of losses in trade, because they are going to have to spend more money on trying to put it into this paperwork. And of course, as we've seen many, many times, we have unfortunately seen businesses just put up their hands and just say, it's not worth it. And that unfortunately means that that business in that area, in that town, city, village, wherever it may be located, that's potentially going to lead to job losses. That might mean, as we've seen, they may even move their business out of the UK completely. And we have seen that. We have actively seen that happening over the past couple of years. And this is now happening even more. You've had Nigel Farage recently complain that we've had more and more of these young people leaving to go to work in Italy and Portugal. Gee, I wonder why. But this continues to be, the conundrum of Brexit. Eventually, they'll figure it out. Eventually, they will. Then, of course, they're still very, very much in the blame stage of the whole process. Like I say, they'll blame everyone but themselves because, after all, this was their project. It was on them to make it work. And none of them have really proposed anything beyond we do it and somehow it works. There's a big gap missing between you doing it and then profiting from it. There's just the thing missing in the middle, guys, which is what we've been shouting at you guys for years. What about this? And of course, your response has always been, oh, that's just Project Fear. Of course, it's been proved more and more it was never just Project Fear. So, as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and an invitation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.